In the perfect world, my opinion is we would all run a lawn care program that is 100% organic. But my reservations have always been that it costs more to provide the service, it takes additional training, and it takes a massive amount of education with the property owner. And in such a cost conscious market, especially in the commercial space, to try to educate the buyer and then have them spend the additional money and give you the patience and the time to produce great results, I find that to be a challenge with the organic programs. And so I, in a series of questions, asked Tom Kelly if Be Safe, what is the status here? If we implement an organic program based on where we are technology-wise these days in the organic world and the products that are out there and what is now capable, are we still at risk of alienating and losing a fair number of our clients if we try to switch them from a traditional standard program, chemical program, over to an organic program? And if so, what is the solution? So in this video, I'm chatting with Tom Kelly. I don't want to jeopardize losing one of my clients because I've switched over to a true full organic program and I'm getting slower results. And then they're dissatisfied and they look at their neighbor's property next door and they say, hey, his looks great and green and he got real quick results. What do you know? And then they start to think we're incapable, essentially. So the results is a big one. I think myself and a lot of people are concerned about that. What have you learned? What are you seeing? I mean, because you are really, this isn't theory. You're doing this. So what are you seeing in the real world in the way of results? And what would be the expectation if I implemented something like an organic program in my company, a true organic program?
Again, great question. And what's going on now is a little bit different than, I think I mentioned what I call first generation organics. The organics that we're doing now are very different than that first generation or old fashioned type organics. It's a completely different, line of products and just philosophy. So in the past, typically you need to tell your customer, hey, look, there's going to be a couple year transition period here where, we're going to start, using natural fertilizers and we're going to start working on, soil biology, but it takes a long time. It happens over the course of a few years. And, in a touchy-feely sort of way, that's great, and if everybody had, patience to wait a couple of years to have a nice lawn, we'd all switch to organic right away. But, that doesn't, account for the customer that gets mad at you for a patch of clover or for a dandelion or when the color isn't perfect. And that's the reality of it, I think, is that, you always have to, it's great to implement an organic program, but if you're not considering your business, then you're probably setting yourself up to fail. You have to meet your customers' expectations.
Right.
So a couple things here. One is that the new organics and a lot of the new methods and products and programs and all that good stuff really allow for a much quicker transition. You don't have to tell your customer that you have to wait 2 or 3 years, for the lawn and soil to catch up with itself, and to wean itself off of chemicals. That's not necessarily the case anymore. But I think more importantly, and again, this is a business thing, as opposed to an advocacy thing. If you've got a customer who is telling you that if you don't go out there and spray that dandelion or kill that clover or whatever, if they're telling you they're going to cancel your service unless you do that, in my opinion, you want to take care of the customer. And if you need to take a couple of steps backwards in terms of the products that you're using in order to keep your customer happy, in order to keep them, enrolled and not cancel, that's an okay, choice to make. You always want to err on the side of doing right by your customer base. And if you need to employ a rescue treatment, now and then, this is something that comes up with us a lot. And I don't want people to think that it's all or nothing. That would be a perfect world again, and we don't live in a perfect world. We want to reduce the amount of pesticides that we use. We want to reduce the amount of chemical inputs that we use. And it might be unrealistic to think that you can snap your fingers and they're all going to go away. If a customer is asking to be transitioned, listen to your customer. You always want to do what's right for your customer base.
I like that approach a lot. So my takeaway on that is it makes organics doable. Whereas if you can't, you can't ever go the alternative route in a sense in an emergency situation, you might stay away from organics completely. Whereas with your approach, which I buy into, I like that, then you can, from a business standpoint, you really don't have the risk of moving yourself in the direction of organics because you got a backup plan for the client that just won't put up with a slow solution or a slower, and even slow solution is probably the wrong word from talking to you because in talking, I get the feeling that in many cases, I mean, you still see nice, quick results, but in a scenario where there's just some trouble area that you've got to resolve fast, that's when you say, worst case, go the old way. Am I hearing you correctly?
Yeah, you are, and,
Okay.
and there's undoubtedly you can transition along, but we've got a couple of case studies where we've got lawns literally right next to each other, without a property divider, where it's really the same. It's the same stand of turf where there's one home, say number 7 is here and number 9 right next door, where they're basically sharing the same front yard.
Right.
And one company's, one home is employing chemical lawn care methods, and the other is using an organic program, and you can't tell the difference. So,
Yeah.
I mean, literally, you can transition a lawn without having to go a long period of time, but you have to bend the rules. Even the most conservative advocates for reducing and eliminating pesticides are going to allow a rescue treatment as long as it's sensible. As long as it's the last resort. If you're just trying to save a customer, and the alternative would be that customer can cancel and then maybe go back to 15 applications of blanket weed control again. So it's okay
Right.
to take a step backwards to take 2 steps forward. So
That's a good point.
there's definitely room.